If I could honestly still smoke a cigarette, the very first song that I would listen to is Let Down by Radiohead. It's been more than 3 years since I decided to quit such a vice, smoking. It's something that I've been doing for a very long time. When I was a teenager, when I was 15, I started doing it as a habit that became an addiction as I got older, especially during my teenage years, and it got worse during the pandemic, which I have really talked about for a long time, not just with my friends and family, but also through different mediums of art. And one of the things that really got me is when I was young, I really do not want to show that side of myself. That was a bit of a gloomy or melancholic kind of person. I tried to hide that as much as possible and tried to live a facade of being something that I'm not. It was how I used to deal with things because who wants to have a bowl of emptiness with them, like a black hole, just taking out all of the energy around them? No one really wants that. And I understand why it is really important for me to assess myself of what I really wanted to do. And there have been a lot of instances in my life, especially now that I got older and hopefully got really wiser with things, that I shouldn't really be hard on myself. And at the same time, I should really understand that for me to not let myself down, I have to let go. One of the things that I used to hate is listening to things or music that is the norm or something that a lot of people are telling me to listen to. I've heard of Radiohead for a very long time, and I opted not to really listen to them by choice because of how people kept talking about it. And I was really young at that time. I really didn't get the genre, didn't really get the idea of it. But as years progressed, especially when I first heard Creep, and one of the key moments that made me really love the song is when I heard it in the movie Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 when Rocket was singing it. There was something about the acoustic version of Creep that really spoke to me, and I was trying to understand what it really meant at that time. It was difficult because I don't know. I have no idea. But for some weird reason, that was the point that I was like, maybe there's something here in Radiohead that I really have to sink my teeth in. Because when I was young, I once got laughed at in class because I was asked to make a sentence. And I made this sentence wherein it says, walking alone is my hobby. I was called out by my teacher. I even wrote it on the board, and she was like, walking alone is not a hobby. And I smiled at her and I laughed at the joke with the class, even though I really wanted to say at that time, that was when I was 14, turning 15, that that was really my hobby. Because in school, I'm a social butterfly. Everybody knows me, and I was really good with almost, if not everyone. And it was during those moments outside of that particular four walls that I am really struggling to understand what it was. And I do think that there are a lot of factors growing up that made me really struggle to speak of these emotions because of how I had to somewhat muscle up and somewhat be a man about it. And it's kind of poetic because just a day ago, we remembered 2 years since my father passed away. And it was one of the things that me and my brother somewhat agreed upon or somewhat talked about, that as years progress, we're ending up like our dad in a way that whether we like it or not, we're just like him. And I figured that even my dad was really, really reserved in terms of his feelings. But what I understood, especially when I got older and started experimenting on things, especially with art, with how I would like to represent my emotions through poetry, through short films, and so on, it was actually my very first spoken poetry video that I posted on my, I think it was my 19th birthday, that when my father saw it, he really spoke to me about it in a minimal manner way. And he just asked, "Is that what you truly felt? Like, do I really feel like I'm not myself?" And I said yes. And we didn't really talk about it much because I didn't know how to talk about that with my dad. But ever since then, he tried his best to really connect with me, and he did. We really got closer much better instead of just hating each other with how one doesn't want to follow all the rules and the other wants to be firm. But we found our middle ground and we got a much better relationship. And when I was really crashing out the past few months, one of the things that I've done to torture myself was to read our old conversations. And I do go back to this one message wherein he just messaged me like, if there's something wrong, dude, you can talk to me or something like that. I wish I did. I really wish I did. But all I told him is that I'm okay now, pops. Don't have to worry. And that was a difficult thing for me because even now, um, I'm more open to all of my loved ones, to my sister, to my brother, to my mom. But I always tell them things once they're over. Just weird. I don't know why I opted to just work on things by myself. And Radiohead somehow became my way to somewhat smoke those cigarettes that I've been smoking for a long time without actually lighting up one. It was actually the song How to Disappear Completely, which found me like a few days or weeks when my father passed away. And when I listened to that song, I just couldn't help but shed, not necessarily shed, but actually let things river. And when I thought of that particular thing, the more I fully understood how I viewed myself and how I treated myself horribly and how I have to really just not necessarily man up, but just accept the way things are and not force things to be something else. And the reason why I'm going back to this is when I had my last academic year as a teacher, I was able to create these connections that for me I felt like it was the best that I could. But then after that, I had to quit teaching because it was too much for me, which is something that I've talked about for countless amount of times already. I'm actually sick of it. But it was the repercussions of that decision that really made me understand that some of these connections are just along the way. Not all of them are meant to stay. Like when I quit teaching, I did disappear completely in terms of like just being in my own zone for 6 months. From July to December of last year, I was just working a regular desk job, contact center job that I never really liked, but something that I did not hate at all because it helped me pay for my bills. But it wasn't something that I really got accustomed to or attached to. Even the people in there, I could only say that I have one person that I could call like a work friend, but not an actual friend. But during those times that I disappeared, only a select number of people really waited for me, and I couldn't help but appreciate those people who were like open arms when I finally came back. And I also look back upon all those people that I thought would have waited and understood why, but to be lied in front of your face is something that was too much for me that I had to let things go. And I realized how much I had been somewhat doing myself injustice by making myself always available when I was young until I was old enough to really understand it. Even the past few months, I still had those instances like, why am I always saying yes to things? But then I realized that's why I had to cut off some people to say goodbye to it, whether I liked it or not. It's something that I had to accept. I had to say goodbye to those things because I fully understood and realized that I'm the only one looking at it or seeing it as something that was more than what it was. One of the things that really made me realize how important it is to value those people that actually is there for you. I don't get messages at all, and that's something that I fully understood. But when I got a message from one of my colleagues back in the academy, who is now working abroad, she came back to, have a vacation. When she messaged me and said, "Yo, are you available this Monday?" And I was like, "Yes." To be remembered that way, that's something that meant a lot to me. And we were there, like the four of us who were really good friends in our math area that time, just having fun like the good old days. It was just 3 or 4 hours of us together, just chatting and laughing like old time's sake, like where we left off. That's something that really means the world to me because we don't have to speak every day, but for them to treat me the way they used to, without lying to my face the way others did, that made me realize that I'm glad that I cared about this way because I didn't let myself down. But even though after that I was really, as much as I wanted to stay at peace or happy with that interaction or that date that we have with those friends, like all of us, I really struggled to understand why the others, who I was actually much closer with in my eyes, why they did, why they had to treat me that way, why they had to look at me that way. And that's when I understood that you just cannot expect too much because you're just letting yourself down. And it's it's a painful thing, but that's what human connection is all about. You will have all of those expectations, all of those desires of things, but none of them will work out. That's why when when I was working on things, especially now that I'm still yet to put out, I fully understood that I have to suck this thing up. I'm still in this transition from one point to another, and that I have to maximize it instead of dwelling on the bad things. I am slacking off sometimes. I'm drinking more than I usually do, which is something that I'm supposed to stop. I have to stop sooner or later. But creatively speaking, I am more in tune. And I know some of my friends are like, why don't you go out? Why don't you hang out or something like that? But I mean, as much as I would like to try, it just doesn't work on my favor. It's something that I had to accept, but something that's difficult for them to understand maybe because they're my friends, so they know me, and they're nice to me. Like they said, put myself out there. I tried, it didn't work. No matter what I do, it doesn't work. So if I'm going to meet new people, it's going to be by happenstance and not online. And something that I'm like, yeah, why not? But with the people that really believed in me, I really couldn't help but think of my closest friend. I think who really just messaged me this like after like one of our sessions. He was like, "I hope you're having fun here in this master's program," because he's the one who really pulled me in and was like, "Yo, go get this master's." We were really talking about it like during that last session. Even our professor was talking about it. They were really asking like, "What's your plan with this one?" And I overshared, and I was like, "Man, why did I overshare? Why did I have to mention that if that passed away, that's quite quick to change, and why did I have to share this and that?" I had to stop myself at times. But then when they asked, "What's your next plan?" It was difficult for me because I don't really know if it's for me. But I needed the master's program because it gives me time. It provides me time, not only to pay for my bills, but also it gives me time to improve in the academe, also time for my arts and those ventures, which people would look into like, why are you doing that? What are you getting from that? It's difficult to explain. And even though the amount of downtime that I get from it is way too much for me to handle at times, it's difficult to speak of it because sometimes you just really wish that you could speak to it more than just poetry, more than just those sketches, more than the ideas. You wanted to share them with people, but not everyone will be there available. That's why when I was like in my early 20s, like 22, 23, I was always the one to message people like, yo, do you want to hang out or something like that? Or when there's like things that they needed to do, I was the first one that they think of, like, yo, let's go out and something. Because I was always available for them. I always made myself available. And it didn't go well because when I was gone, when I wasn't around, and you know, just it's a bitter pill to swallow that you've made all of those things to always make yourself available, and you realized that doesn't go both ways all the time. That's why I had to really limit myself and take care of myself, even though being alone is difficult. I have grown to love it, and sometimes understood that there are instances where it would have been much better if you could share it. But the the it's not necessarily fear, but the worry, I guess, of being rejected is something that was too much of a burden for me. That it's an unnecessary hassle. That's why I prefer watching films alone now. I've been watching films alone for a long time, but before I even tried talking to people if they want to watch it with me and times like that, but getting rejections is too much. And I was like, yeah, I'll just do it on my own. At least I could be at peace with it. And I do realize because I'm not in a rush, and I know that I'm not ready, and I'll never be ready for it. But if things arrive the way they're supposed to, then so be it. For now, I guess I'll just have to fall and just understand more about myself, which is actually something that I've been doing. I'm getting healthier and healthier by the day, I think, and I am more in tune with things, and I really understand what I wanted to do in terms of how I would like to spend my days in this transition time for 2 years. I am in no rush for things, and I just know that maybe one day I will actually grow wings and learn to fly. Who knows? Because I'm still trying to make sense of why it had to be me who had to carry that weight. It's not that I regret it, I just had to make sense of why it had to be me. And I am no speaker for the dead yet, but if there's one thing that I can really explain is this provided me with time to not only grieve but to also see myself better. I know that not everything will go my way ever, so I'll just it's not that I'm just letting things be. I'm just working on myself, feeling things now instead of throwing it away. If I'm sad, I'm sad. If I'm feeling shitty, I'm feeling shitty. But I no longer dwell on that for a long time because I know that if I feel shitty for a while, it's not gonna help me. I cannot stop sketching. I cannot stop writing because if I do that, I will lose myself. And it doesn't feel like work. It's the only thing that's keeping me sane. But at the same time, you don't want to quit when you're almost there. It's like with Radiohead in a sense. To put it in full circle, those songs may feel like, or people may say like, you're too sad for that, blah blah blah. That song is empty, and I think that's something that you have to fully understand. That it has to be, it had to be. Some parts of it had to be empty. I guess in the emptiness, the best thing that you could do is to understand why there is something like that. Like, why is there silence? Why is there darkness? Because of, you know, the music, the light. I just have to
stay a bit longer. And now, with things just going crazy back and forth, things are not making sense. But the thing that just had to make sense is yourself. And I figured that out. Because if I'm always trying to impress everybody, nothing will make sense. That's why I don't take myself too seriously, in a way that I am now open for my art to be interpreted in some way, shape, or form. It's no longer mine once it's out there. Just like how this emotions that I've been speaking of for a long time, trying to put them into pieces, it's all out there now. I have to let it go. This kind of thing, whether people would care, people would listen, what matters to me is I'm leaving traces of it everywhere. Because if you keep holding on to things that will just eventually be a weight you have to carry, a burden, you're just letting yourself down. You're the one who's putting yourself 6 feet underground, and that's something that I will not do no more. And with Radiohead, with Let Down, with Creep, with How to Disappear Completely, I do feel that slowly but surely everything is slowly finding the right place where it had to stay, to make way for more things to come along the way. So yeah, life's crazy, life's difficult. Human connection is therapeutic, melancholic, cathartic, and everything that it has to be. So the best thing that we can do is to allow ourselves to understand that in no shape or form will we ever be ready for everything. We just have to be. Just have to jump. Leap of faith. Because when there's no ground, that's when you can finally make a sound and aim to fly. I'm learning to fly now, Pops. Trying to.